I know you've had comedians speak about Iron Maiden on this podcast recently, but it is a thing I remember from going to see them where Bruce Dickinson came out and he goes, "We know what you want. Our new album in full." And the whole crowd just go, no, that's not what we want.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro.
This is a fun one, you guys.
Yes, it is.
A Chris Turner. So anyway, what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Oh, wow. So I was very guided by my father, because I think he did what I do to my daughter, which is I'm trying to force her to listen to the music I want her to listen to, or at least tolerate it. So he played me, from what I remember, it was mainly Little Feat. Wow. And Michael Jackson. So he would play me lots of Little Feat, and I specifically remember Dixie Chicken being the song that he would play all the time. He definitely also played Steely Dan, but I did not get that. I feel like you can't get Steely Dan until you're, in your 40s, because then you're like, it's about the production, man. The production is what makes it. Yes. And then I met one half of Steely Dan, the living one, like a year and a half ago at the Comedy Cellar, and it was Donald Fagen, right? And I sent it to my dad, and he was like so unimpressed. Like, Dad, look, it's the guy. And he was like, oh yeah. I'm like, they're your favorite band. He's like, yeah, but like, so what? Like, how boring are you, Dad? So yeah, Little Feat. And then Michael Jackson, my dad would just play, I think we had the VHS of all of the Michael Jackson videos, and he would just play those, and I would just try and dance like Michael Jackson. Not sing, because I can't sing. I can't dance either, but I tried. I think when you can't sing, because people go, oh, you can't sing. When you can't dance, people are like, look at him trying to dance.
Yeah. Dancing's kind of in the eye of the beholder,
Exactly, yeah.
I think everybody can dance, It's just
dance.
Super entertaining, or also...
this is how bad I am at dancing. I was at a club in Manchester when I was 18, and it was a 24-hour rock club called Gillies. I don't think it's still there, but like, what a great place! Like 24-hour rock club, by which I mean it opened at like 6 p.m. and went until 6 a.m. It wasn't actually 24-hour, but it was open at night. And so at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., they would have a break from the rock, and they would play just dance music for an hour, because they assumed that was when everyone was on drugs. And I was dancing, just like cutting loose. And this girl comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, where'd you get those pills?" And I was like, "What pills?" She goes, "The pills that you're on." And I said, "I'm not on pills." And she said, "Well, why are you dancing like that?"
That's pretty good.
Yeah. We hooked up for 3 months after that. So that's how I got chatted up by someone saying, "You dance like a druggie."
That's pretty good. Picking up chicks by dancing poorly is a new thing.
Exactly. Because people are like, oh, a man who dances well, that tells you how he's going to be in bed. So, me dancing very poorly was probably quite accurate given my age.
But like, if you watch any kind of old movie, that's all everybody danced. Everybody. That's like the only way you would have any kind of physical contact with someone of the opposite sex or anybody else, is if you danced.
Yeah, I mean, it's the like, if you think about the entertainment of the past, like the movies, which are just movies where they dance, and some of that's great. Some of that's like Swing Time, the movie. That's a banging movie. And then Top Hat, which is the kind of flip side to that, is a terrible movie. And I think these are both with the same dancers. It's just that one's a great film and one sucks. But yeah, you just go and watch Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dance. You're like, okay, cool. And then they turned them into color, and it was like, wow. God, the old times. Different
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so then when you got into like middle school, high school, what kind of music were you listening to?
Yeah, what was the first music that was yours? You're like, this is for me.
Yeah, that you identified with.
So I was an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old around the turn of the millennium, so 2000, 2001. So this is going to be very embarrassing and terrible because it's all new metal. It's all like Korn and Limp Bizkit, and it's really bad. But Korn was the first concert I went to on my own, like the first one I asked for a ticket for and went on my own. Prior to that, my first concert had been Kylie Minogue, the Australian pop icon, which was fantastic. She did a great job, lots of dancing, lots of costume changes, which I think is how you judged a concert back then when they were in a big stadium. But yeah, Korn, Limp Bizkit. I definitely had like the Fred Durst red New York Yankees baseball cap that you wear back to front with the little MLB logo on it. Thought I was so cool. But then I also credit that with partially introducing me to rap, which is, for listeners who are unfamiliar, that is the basis of my comedy. I am a comedian who specializes in freestyle rap, as well as general musical comedy. And so, Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park, like Linkin Park were new metal, but they did a still, I think, very catchy collaboration with Jay-Z. Like Hybrid Theory has some songs on that you're like, oh, this actually made like rock and rap work in that kind of context. Obviously it works in other contexts with, like I guess Beastie Boys and if we're going to include Aerosmith and Run DMC. But yeah, very embarrassing new metal, headbangy, rah-rah stuff. And luckily that was only a couple of years before I realized, oh, you can have the heaviness of new metal through like, Nirvana and, kind of early Soundgarden without having all the kind of bro-ness of it. And then my rap kind of, developed into more mature taste. And by mature, I mean, just being like, hey, Snoop Dogg's great. If that can be counted as mature, really.
So did you start rapping before you started playing guitar?
No. I was playing guitar from about 11 or 12. And then I was rapping around about 12. But I didn't understand what rap was. I was just making up my own little raps because I assumed that's what rap was. So I'd listen to Outkast and be like, wow, I can't believe Andre 3000 can make up all these lyrics. That's like, he's so smart. And I thought of myself as a smart kid, so I wanted to be able to do that. So I just started making up my own raps. But guitar, I was taking lessons from maybe like 11 or 12 because that was, again, the music that I was like, oh, this is what you do. You play guitar and you rock out. Whereas for me, I wasn't like, if I'm listening to Outkast, I'm not like, oh, this is what I do. It's like, no, I'm not from Atlanta. I don't become a rapper. I just did that because I thought it was fun. And then the irony is as soon as I started doing comedy when I was like 19, I stopped trying to be in bands because I realized, oh, I have much more fun and success on stage when I'm telling jokes compared to when I'm playing guitar music that no one wants to listen to.
So did you play in bands before or?
Yeah, in a very small way, like teenage bands.
Right.
So I had a band called Lethian Sound, who were a drone band, which was me and my best friend Stu, and we very much like just kind of tried to rip off any drone bands that we liked, which pretty much were only Sun at that time. I think they were the only real drone band that we were aware of. So we wore robes and lots of like just holding one chord for an hour. Which, look, it means that I played that music to essentially the max standard it could be, when all you could do is hold an A. Like, I did a school music recital where I went in, they were like, what are you playing? I was like, I'm going to play a Lamont Young piece, like one of the pioneers of drone. And they were like, okay. And I just leant my guitar against my amplifier and just fiddled with the amplifier knobs to sculpt the sound for 5 minutes, and then I finished. They were like, "Is that your performance?" I was like, "Yeah, guys, why are you so boxed in? Why do you think that music has to be about technical ability? Like, it has to be about some ability?" I'm like, "No, feel how it filled the space." Oh God, I was insufferable. But the good thing about doing the Lethian Sound was, one, we learned. This is what you learn. You just need one good member. And me and Stuart sucked, but we had a choir boy sing for us, and he had a beautiful voice. So we would play horrible music. He would just angelically intone over the music. Our performances, and we probably did 6 gigs. Our performances were theatrical. Like we had one gig where we dragged him out of the public toilet in a body bag onto stage.
Nice.
And then he'd climb out the body bag, and he had he had something where he couldn't feel pain. So he had like needles stuck in his arm and his flesh, and he would kind of like pull them out while he was singing about like, I don't know, hell, but he'd be a beautiful voice. And we would just wear robes and just be like, it meant that if you're the only like band in that genre in your city, when bands come to town, you get to open for them. So we opened for like a couple of, again, so obscure no one would know who they are, but bands that we liked, we got to open for them. So that was cool. And then when I went to university, I started doing weird solo electronic stuff, which was terrible, and also a jazz drumming and free guitar improvisation duo that I, in my head, thought was like Lauren Connors, but was in actual fact so tedious. He was a great drummer, but I was so bad at guitar at that stage because I'd spent 2 years just playing one chord for an hour.
So who was your first, like, what got you into comedy? Who was your first comedian?
The first comedian you remember loving as a kid.
I loved Jimmy Carr. I loved Ricky Gervais when I was, 17, 18, because I think that's the perfect age to like that type of comedy, because it's very mean-spirited comedy and it's quite edgy. So it's funny to, hear people say offensive things. And I think as you become more mature in comedy, you're like, oh, there should still be some art to it. Jimmy Carr's joke writing obviously is artful. Ricky Gervais's comedy has become progressively less about jokes and more about offense, I think. But his first special, Animals, is really amazing, especially for a person who'd not done stand-up before that, which is pretty incredible. So I loved them. And then there was also like my dad playing me stuff by Stan Freberg, who was a kind of American musical comedian satirist. He did lots of essentially parodies of stuff. I think his most famous one is the Banana Boat song, the one that goes like Deo, Deo. But he did like a parody version of it, which it's pretty funny. And I liked him. And then also kind of like the musical comedy of Monty Python, because they would always doing dumb songs which are very silly, and like silly ditties and things like that is stuff that I really liked. But yeah, I was very much a one-liner comedian when I started out. I started out at university, and I wanted to just do Jimmy Carr style jokes, stuff like Anthony Jeselnik, where or Stephen Wright, you're just doing a weird one-liner and then moving on to the next one, which is not what I do now. So it's kind of weird to look back at clips of me from 14 years ago, be like, oh, he's a one-liner comedian. And then now you watch me and you go, sorry, you're a storyteller who freestyle raps? You're nothing like that comedian you used to be. You're like, yeah, because number one, when you're on stage, you're nervous when you're new. So why not be all deadpan and tell jokes in a kind of removed way? And number two, when you start, you only have like 5 minutes of jokes. And sometimes people go, can you do 10 minutes? You're like, yeah. And so you just have to put double the pause between your jokes. That was my secret, how I started out.
That's not bad. So getting back to that, you have to write a bunch if you're going to be a one-line comedian. So did you, when you were getting into it, did you already have 5 minutes prepared, or had you spent, like, how'd you get to the first gig, and what, sparked that?
Yeah, so I was at Oxford University, and I think one of the byproducts of how hard you have to work there, because you have to write 2.5 essays a week, which is insane. That's so many. And, this is before ChatGPT, kids, where you can just type, write me an essay. And so my brain was so working at writing these essays that in its downtime, it would just kind of like, as a byproduct, spit out jokes. And then I would tweet them. Again, this is 2009. So like really early Twitter, when it was just comedians. Like Twitter used to just be funny jokes, and now it's just people complaining or stealing jokes. But it used to just be like, if you followed comedians, you just have a thread of jokes. And so you tweet jokes, people would be like, good joke, Chris, or like, you could do better. So I'd tweet these jokes out. If they worked, I'd then go tell them on stage. That was kind of how it worked. But I mean, my first gig was the day after Michael Jackson died. My opening joke, which I thought up the day before the gig when he died, I was like, I walked on stage and I had my hands in my pockets and I just kind of looked really kind of downtrodden. I was like, guys, every comedian tonight has made fun of the death of a person who I admire, someone I grew up listening to. And so I just want you to know that in my performance tonight, there will be no jokes about and no making fun of Michael Jackson. And then I take my hand out my pocket to grab the microphone and I'm wearing one white glove. And that was the first joke. And I get this laugh from the crowd. I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. And then the rest of the set was 5 minutes of forgettable comedy. But, you know, I got my first joke. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then, you know, the next 2 gigs were progressively worse. Your first gig's always best. And then like my third gig, I got silenced off stage because they hated my jokes. And because also, again, when you're new, you think that you have to do new jokes each time. So like my first gig, 5 minutes of jokes. Next gig, 5 minutes of new jokes. They weren't as good. Third gig, 5 minutes of even newer jokes, even worse. And yeah.
So how long was it before you moved overseas?
So I started...
And was it for comedy? Did you work a bunch over there and go, you know, the next step is to try it in America?
I moved to America for comedy, and partially just a desire to live in America ever since I was little. But yeah, I was doing comedy from 2009. I graduated university in 2011, started doing comedy full time, but not making a living from it. I just kind of like had no money for a couple of years and was fortunate to live with the girl I was dating then who had lived with her parents. So she had a house, so I didn't have to earn any money. And then 2013, I started making money from comedy. 3-4 more years passed. We're in 2016, 2017. That was when I moved to LA specifically because I was doing well in the UK, kind of doing lots of corporate gigs, which is good to make money. And then a combination of like Brexit happened, which made me like kind of shocked. I was like, oh, my country is not as nice as I thought it was. Everyone's just been like, yeah, we hate these foreigners. You're like, oh, okay. Oh, maybe that's bad. And so that mixed with, I wasn't getting famous in the UK. I was like, I think I'm pretty good. It's kind of weird I'm not on TV. Oh, okay. And also just wanting to, kind of mix it up and see what America was like. So moved to America. LA was tough. Because you move from the UK where you're like, hey, I headline all these clubs, I'm good. And they're like, we've never heard of you. Back of the line. Yeah. So it didn't matter how funny you were. It mattered like how many tickets you could sell. And then after a couple of years in LA, started picking up some steam there. Then pandemic. Oh no. And now I live in New York because I moved there. Moved here after the pandemic because I was like, I just want to be at the best place to do comedy, and that's the Comedy Cellar. And I moved here to just play there all the time. So that's, it's a very privileged and fortunate position to be in because it's the best club in the world and I get to play there whenever I want to, which is delightful.
And when did you start adding in the rap to the comedy?
Yeah, were you still one-liners when you hit LA?
No. I stopped doing one-liners really around about 2012, 2013, which is when I started earning money because it was really hard to get booked as a one-liner comedian. So I was adding the rap in from about 2012, 2013. That was again when I started making money because I used to do the rap for kids shows because I thought it was this gimmick. I was like, it's just making up a song. Anyone can do that. And at my kids shows, they would enjoy it. Like you'd have a kid in the crowd with a toy. You'd be like, oh, you got like a Spider-Man toy? Do you know that he's a really cool rapper? And then I'd be like, yeah, what do you want Spider-Man to rap about? And they'd be like, oh, whatever. And then you'd make Spider-Man rap. And they'd be like, this is cool. And a critic who was dating another comedian in that show said essentially, hey, I don't think Chris is very funny, but I think that rap's really good. He should do that. He'll make a living from comedy if he does that. So I started adding it in my kind of adult shows. And very quickly, it became that it was hard to put me as a kind of, a 10-minute spot because like the rap would crush. So you'd have to have me like opening the show or closing the show. And so I wasn't funny enough to close a show, but I'd get to close shows by virtue of having this kind of improv, this crowd work that worked really well.
And
And
was the
then-
first time you did it, was it a rap that you had already written, or do you use crowd work? Like you asked
no,
the
it's
crowd-
always improvised. It's always
Okay.
freestyle.
Okay.
Yeah, I only in the last couple of 2019 was when I started doing written songs in my shows because I wasn't musically confident enough before then to bring it on stage. But now it's interesting because I then toured a musical comedy show which had freestyle in, but was also a bunch of written stuff. I started doing some shows in like kind of more around the States, and I did a show in Oklahoma City a few months back. And I was like, tell you what, I've got like a country song that I really like and it's really funny. So I closed with that song rather than a freestyle. And like the reaction was as good as if I'd done a freestyle. I was like, okay. And they'd seen me do a freestyle. It wasn't like I didn't. I did a freestyle in the show. And then I was like, tell you what, let's close with something else. Do you guys want some country? And they were like, yeah. And I did it. And they were like, whoa, I love that song. And then like, it's a song that I've done last year in Utah. And I went back this year to do a show. I did a new hour of stuff. And this woman's like, hey, where was your country song? I was like, I did that last year. She's like, yeah, but I wanted it again. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're starting to realize that just because you do this act that is really different and unique, like with the freestyling, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you can do. So it's made me more confident in writing stuff and knowing that, okay, I can do a show which is mainly written music because I'm a good lyricist. My writing is sharp. My joke writing is good. And one problem with comedy songs sometimes is that there's not enough jokes in them. Like the song is the joke. Like, oh, we get it. The chorus is the punchline, but then the verses are just kind of rhyming.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, if you're a comedian, it doesn't take that long to come up with a funny perspective on an expression.
Right.
And you know, I always try and put a lot of work in. Like when I'm writing a song, I mean, like before I spoke to you, I was specifically like just listing out joke ideas. You know, there's for every line that makes it in the song, there's 4 alternate versions of what that line could be. And I'm trimming down the funniest one. So ideally, while still being structurally sound, the song there should be something amusing on every line.
Well, I'm wondering, and you probably haven't been doing it, the songs enough, but I wonder, jokes, people get mad if they hear the same joke the next time you come back through. But as musicians, people want to hear the songs they already know, and they don't want to hear any new stuff. So I wonder when you start doing a lot of these songs, whether people are going to be pissed if you come back the next year, or whether it turns into a song like any other song where they're like, I want to hear that song.
Yeah, I think the current show that I'm writing all these songs for will have an encore section where I do a couple of old songs in there because I know that people will want them. But yeah, I know you've had comedians speak about Iron Maiden on this podcast recently, but it is a thing I remember from going to see them where Bruce Dickinson came out and he goes, "We know what you want, our new album in full." And the whole crowd just go, no, that's not what we want. And then they play this whole new album. And they did an encore with one song. They did one old song. They were just like, okay, Run to the Hills. You're like, guys, come on. Play the new album for one half of the show and then classics. That's why we're here. We will let you do the new album if you play the hits. And I get that it's frustrating, but also, you're Iron Maiden. You'd be lucky that you're still touring and selling out arenas. So yeah, I'm aware of that with the songs that people are going to want to request stuff. But then for me, I guess the thing is like a lot of the songs from my last tour show were written in 2019. Like that's so long ago now. That's so long. I don't want to do those songs. I'd like to be more like a Nirvana, where no one's going to a Nirvana show and saying, play Bleach. You want people to request from Nevermind onwards or whatever.
Right. So I'm curious because we've talked to a bunch of comedians, and sometimes like when you're doing the rap thing the first time, what was the reception from other comedians? Because some comedians don't like music acts, like guitar acts. They say, I don't know why.
Well, I know why, because it's the stand-up is supposed to be standing up there and talking, and then you're adding this great, amazing talent that you have
They feel
onto.
like they get mad because they can't play, and they're like, it's so fucking easy when the guy's playing guitar. So did you catch any of that when you were rapping?
So I get the perspective because I used to hate musical comedians, like watching them. I was like, guys, that's music. Leave the music to the music. This is comedy, stand-up comedy. Why are you on a stool? And, you know, people used to say guitars were 6-string applause machines. And
Pretty good.
yeah, because you just like, you'd play a song and thank you, and everyone applauds. And now I'm like, well, no, if you do it well, it's totally fine. I still dislike it when I see musical comedians just doing, like I said before, play a little chorus and there's one joke. Because there are straight musicians who are funnier than that. Like, you know, country is something that's a really good example of. There's so much funny country. There's so much funny rap. There's lines in rap songs. I'm like, God, that's a good joke. And they're not a comedian. So when I hear comedians do unfunny songs, I'm like, come on. But yeah, I'm sure that there are people who dislike that I do what I do. And I would say that not all of that is going to be down to jealousy or thing. It's probably just, you know, like, I don't think that that's what this should be, which fair enough. That's their opinion. I don't care about it particularly. I know that I lost work as a result of doing it. I was on a tour. I was opening for a bigger comedian, and their tour show was lazy. It was not a good show. They were selling, you know, expensive tickets. The hour that they were doing was really underbaked. It wasn't that funny. And I was opening the show. And on the second night of opening this show in like one of this comedian's favorite cities, they didn't have a great gig. I had a really good gig. And then the next day, the local newspaper published this review saying, you know, this hour is, you know, really not worth the money, but the saving grace is Chris Turner, whose, you know, blend of jokes, improv, and freestyle rap really brought the house down. Made the ticket price worth it alone. And then my agent calls up and I'm like, hey, have you seen this review? This is sick. He's like, yeah, about that. You're off the tour. And I was like, wait, but I got a good review. He's like, yeah, because you got a good review. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And it's happened a couple of times where I've been scheduled to open for someone and then I've been unceremoniously booted off. On the flip side, there are comedians I open for. Brad Williams is a really good example. Brad and I met in Vegas doing this Cirque du Soleil show, and he was like, hey, you should open for me. This is why I was in Oklahoma City with him. And I was like, oh, do you mind if I do the freestyle? Because like it kind of, you know, brings the vibe up. He's like, no, do the freestyle. That gets the crowd so hyped up. And no one's going to leave my show going, wow, he was funnier than Brad. He's like, they've come to see me. What they're going to leave thinking is, wow, Brad put on an amazing show.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, anyone who can't go on after you doing that shouldn't be touring. They shouldn't have their own hour. And you see it at the Comedy Cellar. Like, you know, people, you know, I'll go on at the Cellar and then someone big might drop in to do new material. They don't care that I've done a rap beforehand. They're going to go on and kill it because they're good. And there are comedians I don't like going on after because I think they're so funny that the crowd are like, we're done, no more laughs, and I have to go on. I'm like, why'd you have to be so funny? So I know the feeling of having to go on after someone who's done really well, but it just makes you have to be better because you have to navigate that, you know. It's like, say that you date this, you know, like hot person and their previous partner was like a supermodel. You know, like you're like, oh God, I'm gonna have to be great because, well, yeah, you should be. You have to be good. So yeah, I'm comparing myself to a supermodel right there. That's what my act is.
So yeah,
My
you have
act.
to be hotter than you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're like, when you moved to LA, was it just, I'm going to do stand up, or were you wrapped up in all that? You know, there's TV shows, there's movies, I can act, I can do any of that. Was it just, I want to do stand up, or were you like, I'm going to see where some of this takes? Because it seems
just
like
stand up. I can't act really. I've like auditioned for so many roles just because in LA people would be like, oh, he's British, let's call him in. And then I'd get there and do like the reading and they're like, yeah, but can you act it? I'm like, what do you mean act it? I can play myself. Like, I'm a good improviser. I'd done enough stuff where I'd improvise scenes that were fun, but yeah, I don't. There's a Mitch Hedberg joke, which is oft quoted. He says, like, when you reach a certain level in comedy, people producers want you to do all these other things. He goes, they want you to act, they want you to write, they want you to, do advertisements. He goes, that's like going to a chef and being like, wow, you make such delicious meals, but can you farm? And I really know what he means. And so I was not saying, if someone came to me and said, hey, Chris, I think you're really funny. Would you like to be in this? Or, hey, Chris, you're really funny. Would you write on my show? I would do that if I thought I'd be good at it. I don't like doing things I'm not good at. I've written for stuff. I've acted in stuff when I've gone, yeah, obviously you should have me do that. But it's not a thing I go out for, because also you see how in like LA, everyone is applying for stuff. Like I have a friend who is a producer, and during COVID, all like the kind of self-tapes and stuff, I watched a lot of actors' self-tapes for a minor role, a really small role in a thing. And there were like 60% of the tapes were from actors I recognized from TV and movies. I'm like, you'd be up against all these people? Clearly these people are better for the part. So like, God, there's nothing more discouraging than realizing you have to be better than a famous person. Right. Or, better. I mean, there is that big thing of British people going over to America, putting on American accents and getting cast in roles. I don't know how that happens. That is outrageous. But, the sheer number of American characters played by British people. But it wouldn't work for me, because whenever I do an American accent, I sound like the one American accent I was taught was when I was drunk in a bar in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the doorman just was like, so you can speak like me, talk like this. And I was like, okay, I'll talk like you. And I'm like, that's
pretty
now
good.
Yeah, but it just means that I sound like an old black guy from Little Rock. Like it's his voice. I can't do any other accent. Oh, sit down here. Yeah, exactly. Love to be here on the podcast with you. So that's how he sounded. That's pretty accurate of how he sounded. And he was just like, repeat after me. You ain't coming in this bar.
It's like, you're probably pretty good at doing impressions of everyone then, if you can do that though, right?
My European accents are pretty good. And sorry, I've been so skillfully eating a banana throughout this recording that I'm sure the listener hasn't noticed at all. And now you're ready. Wait, we've just eaten banana.
Should have kept talking.
No, it's okay.
She did it on purpose.
Yeah, you tricked me.
No, I want to hear your other
metaphorical banana peel. Well, one of the things I like to do, because I can't sing very well, number one, I'm very grateful for the fact that all music is auto-tuned now, because that means when I do songs on stage, I just whack the auto-tune on. But also, my singing when I'm in an accent is much better. So one of the things when I do my freestyling is if people in the crowd are foreign, and I mean foreign from a country that the British are able to, imitate. There's many places that you can't do the accent of without being horrendously offensive. But if there's a French person in the crowd, like why can I not talk like them when I rap about them? And if there is a German person in the crowd, it is totally fine to do an imitation of the Germans. I'm worse with like Iberian, like. And I've done some okay Scottish. I mean, it depends which part of Scotland you want to think I'm from. I did some shows in Australia where they thought we were either Scottish people pretending to be Australian or Australians pretending to be Scottish. Because my Australian's not bad either. I think I can do a reasonable Australian accent. These are all accents that would not convince anybody from that country that I'm from there. But to Americans, no idea. You have no idea where I'm from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also sound like the smartest person in the room right now.
Well, if I want to sound very intelligent, I make myself sound tremendously British. I walk on stage and I just do this, and audiences absolutely wet themselves. It's delightful.
Now, are there any true idiots that speak with that kind of British dialect, or is it Cockney or whatever?
So no. I think the most stupid people are the upper class people. The people who talk like that, because they're so inbred. Oh yes, mummy. I live in a big mansion house, but I can't afford the upkeep on the roof. Oh no.
That's a good point.
I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone in the British government sounds like that, and they're all fucking idiots.
I think you could say that about all world governments, but we'll leave that alone.
I love it. Proper outlaw country.
Yeah, I'm curious as to...
was Papa Willie impression?
Oh yeah. Do you have a Willie Nelson impression by any chance?
I don't. I'm afraid. Like I said, I've only got that the doorman from Little Rock.
He'll have a Raelyn by the time we're done with this. He's tucking it away. Getting to that, like the freestyling thing, I've seen many clips of it and it's mind boggling. How do you, first of all, when did you start doing it? And second of all, when people give you words, is there any way for you to sort of explain what your brain is doing? Like right when the music starts, is it literally just, I'm coming up with something, or does a line come out and you're already 2 lines past that? How does it work? It's like it's like a mentalist.
Yeah, so I started rapping when I was 12, so that's 21 years ago. And I've just done it a long time, so I'm good at it. But also there's something about my brain that means it's specially suited to freestyling. I don't know what that is. It's a strange brain. To describe it to a musician, when you are soloing, you are not thinking 2 bars ahead. You're thinking about the notes you're playing. You're thinking about the feelings that you want to express through the notes. If you are a non-musician, for the listener, imagine you're learning to drive, but in a British car. So it's got a stick shift, right? So you're not just having to learn the pedals, coordination, hand movements, and your gear changing. You're also having to learn looking around and seeing everything and being safe. That's so many things. When you learn to drive, it's like, how could I ever possibly learn to drive? I have to coordinate all these things. How is that? It seems impossible. But now you can drive. And so if you want to go somewhere, you don't even think. You just drive and you arrive somewhere and you might have forgotten the drive. That's weird when that happens. And that's exactly what freestyling is. The beat starts. I don't think about anything until I start rapping. It comes out. I don't know what order I'm going to do them in. I hate to do this, the second Spider-Man analogy in the podcast, but Spider-Man is in the financial district and he wants to get to Harlem. He doesn't plot out the route he's going to take. It's only sensible if you know that Harlem and the financial district are opposite ends of Manhattan Island. He just fires a web and starts swinging, and he'll adjust and he'll spin round lampposts and he'll shoot a web at the next building. He doesn't go, oh, I've got to hit the side of the Chrysler building and then on to, this one. No, he just adjusts as he goes. And that's what freestyling is. That's what soloing and music is. That's what learning to drive is. There's loads of other things. People think freestyle rapping is chess, where you're thinking moves ahead. It's not. Freestyle rapping is like tennis or racquetball. You can't focus on, you don't know where the ball's going to go next. So you have to just focus on the ball and you're hit. And there you go. So I think those are brilliant analogies. Well done, me. Thank you, me.
Spider-Man and racquetball.
Now, do you smoke weed?
I don't know.
No? Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd be able to and do all that.
I think there's a video of me a video on my phone privately when I was in a European country where I'd done a show with an Egyptian comedian, and he was like, hey, do you want to smoke some hashish? I was like, I don't know what that is. He's like, oh, it's like weed, but it's, kind of like this block of resin. And I didn't ask him how he'd got it into the country. And we smoked it, and it was vile, utterly disgusting, really, really unpleasant, cannot recommend. And then we just freestyled. And at the time, we thought we were spectacular. We were like killing it, laying down these bars. It was in Montreux in Switzerland. And we were like feeling really cool. We're like, oh, we got like, we're in the place where like Smoke on the Water is written about. And they've got a statue of Bon Scott from AC/DC on the lakeshore. So cool. And we're just like rapping. And then I watched the video back, and it's genuinely worse than if a member of the public tried to rap. It was so utterly bad. And so I'm like, oh, Chris, don't rap when you're high. And I don't do it because I'm so scared of meddling with my brain. He says hypocritically, being a comedian who therefore gets drunk a lot of the time. But also, for me, 1 drink makes my freestyling better. 2 drinks take it back to normal. 3 drinks make it worse. But that's the thing with music. I think, your legato is smoother when you've had a drink. Your solos are more intuitive. And I think that actually is the same with freestyling. For me, with any kind of other drugs, like people talk about, oh, you got to do mushrooms and acid. Oh, it'd be really great with your brain. I'm like, I don't want to risk rewiring anything in my head.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before we walked in here, JB was like, "Have you seen this freestyle and stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But I could do that." And he's like, "Okay." And he starts. He said like 4 different things, and I was like, "Yeah, stoplight,
Yeah.
golf cart, river." And I was like, "What was the other thing you said?" And he goes, "I don't even know."
Like, just remembering the words.
Because I couldn't even remember the 4th word he said.
The rap was amazing, by the way.
No doubt.
She just said "hey" at the end of every line.
Yeah, if you just say "hey"
Throw
at
it all
the
line.
end.
I mean, look, there's so many
do know
great
it.
rap songs where every line ends with the same word, and so
Yeah.
sometimes just like, hey, if you can do that, why
juvenile
bother? Why
it.
bother coming up with anything?
Also, all those rappers seem to smoke a lot of weed, but
Yeah, but they're not freestyling.
they're not freestyling. That's true.
Yeah. So there's no real call for freestyling in modern music. It's not a thing that you have to do. And things that are called freestyles are written. It doesn't mean the same
Right.
thing.
I'm always
Do you use old stuff that you've written? Curious.
No, because everything I record, everything I perform, I record for like potential posting online. So if I ever use the same rhymes or same like things about subjects, like I'll rap about the same subject in multiple different ways. Like in the past, week, any week of the year, the same news story will come up throughout that week at shows. And you can't say, when the Chinese spy balloon was happening, 4 times some people asked me to rap about it. And you can't go, no, I've already rapped about that. People are like, boo. So I rap about it, and each time I make it different.
And so you rhyme balloon with a different thing every time?
Exactly.
So have you ever gone up there and bombed and just gone blank at any point and like
It's so funny to me that people always want to know this. People are always like, yeah, but when did it really go bad? And I don't think it's ever. There's been times when I've done it and people have ignored it, or at corporate gigs, no one cares, or I go up there and the reaction is not what I wanted it to be because everyone was drunk. But like, freestyling is predicated on, to some extent, adrenaline, and adrenaline is fight or flight. So it slows time down or it makes you run away.
Huh.
And so when you put your brain in panic mode, like, Chris, this freestyle needs to work or they'll beat you up, or, oh, Chris, this freestyle needs to be good or you'll look like an idiot, which is most of the time, right? Like, if I say I'm going to rap all these things and then I can't, I look like an idiot.
yes.
I don't want that. So adrenaline helps me. Adrenaline's like, don't worry, Chris, we'll make your brain able to do this. So by putting it in panic mode, you can freestyle. It will work out. So it's, I'm sure some people could find videos of me being distinctly average or people not liking it, but that's probably 1 out of 1,000, and that's a decent enough hit rate.
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
think
Yeah,
if-
so
do you think
virtually
if
always
you-
works.
Came across a dangerous situation with you and your family, would you freeze or run? What's it? Fight, flight, or freeze?
Fight or flight. So I think
Or
if
would
there
you
was
start
any
rapping?
dangerous situation, I would start rapping. Yeah. If
Start
someone's like,
rapping,
hey, give me your wallet. I'd be like, okay, but first you give me 5 topics to rap about. A chicka, 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 boom, bitch, boom, boom. That's a big gun stuck in my face. Boom, bitch, boom.
I just
okay.
thought about it with how, because you do this. I've seen Harry Mack online. Maybe I'll start making videos and tell people to give me the words and then just completely bomb in front of them and get their reaction. That might be just
That's
as funny
great.
as
Yeah.
I
impressive.
can imagine that
I'd like
being
that.
very big. I think people would really like that. If you just get suggestions, then you're like, no, man, those are too hard.
Just start a
That would
beat
be-
and just say words in a row. Nothing rhymes. Just get them out.
Yeah, that would be great. That would I would love to see that. That would be fantastic.
Put that nail back. Maybe I'll edit that part out.
Okay, so when's the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa? Willie
Oh
Nelson.
gosh, so you have to remember I grew up in the UK.
Yeah, did you all know about him there?
So I think my introduction would have been through the band Clutch. I think.
Oh wow,
I think it's Clutch, who were my favorite band for a very long time.
great band.
Yeah, I think they had a song which was Willie Nelson only smokes killer weed. I think that was a line in the song, or or what the song was called, or something like that. And so I think that was it. Weirdly, in the last week, because I've been trying to write a kind of southern rock song, And this is a real curveball. It led me to listening to quite a lot of Toby Keith.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm trying to the theme of the song is the fact that I'm essentially an American citizen now. I've got to get it officially done, but I'm going to be an American citizen. I find that very funny because I'm very not American, but I love America. I really like it here. So I'm writing this song that's basically about how American I am. And it's like very comedic and pushed to the max and stuff. And how I was American even when I was in the UK. And, you know, all the other kids would say aluminium and I would say aluminum and all this dumb stuff. But for the song part of it, I've been listening to like 2000s Leonard Skinner, like none of the original band in it, but like, you know, like when it was all kind of stompy and heavy. I want this. It's a song I want to like open the new show. I want it to be really heavy and big. And so I've been watching like Toby Keith, but again later to like patriotic Toby Keith.
Oh yeah,
not like early funny Toby Keith.
We'll stick a boot in your ass, Toby.
Yeah, that stuff. Which I'm just watching it because I'm like, you know, it's of a time. It is of a time, and the crowds are going crazy for it. And that's what I'm trying to do with this song is make this real patriotic country, but a bit heavier, like a bit more like, I mean, I'm going to name bands that no one will know of, like Alabama Thunder Pussy and Five Horse Johnson, more like that, as opposed to, it's not Allman Brothers, right? It's, you know, it's more. And so I was actually listening to a playlist, and then it turns out there was an album where Toby Keith, Willie, and Merle are doing songs together. I was like, huh, that's pretty, like, I put myself in his shoes. I was like, oh, that must have been a real cool thing for him. Then it's very weird to see, you know, like I didn't know how big country music was. It's not a genre in the UK. We do not have it. Like I know that, you know, there's a subculture in fans. Like it's when you move to America and you realize the default music in swathes of the country, like the music that will just be in Walmart is country music. And my wife's family is from Louisiana. They live in Lake Charles. And like you go down there and just like it's everywhere.
It hasn't always been that way though.
My mom's dad lived in Lake Charles. My other grandpa lived there for the whole time I was growing up. So I would go out to Lake Charles and visit them out there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's wild going down there because they all still live there. And like my wife's family, like the oldest members are all in their 90s and still living. And so they're just like, we're just going to live here until we die. Like, why would we leave? Even though, again, people who don't know, Lake Charles is just floods every year. They just have a terrible, terrible time. And every time they rebuild their houses, it's just like, oh, the roof's gone again. And like, it's crazy. But they're like, well, I'm 96. I'm not moving house. You're like, I don't know if you look to the rest of your family. You guys all live forever. So, I'm like, I don't think it's like the next, you've not got 2 more summers. You guys have got another decade. So maybe you do need to move inland.
And speaking of summers, man, it is hot there in the summer.
Oh, it's vicious. This is a fun fact about me. This is how American I am. My honeymoon when I was married in 2018 was to Venice for 1 week with my wife, and then to Dauphin Island, Alabama.
Nice.
Montgomery.
And yeah, exactly. Just proper Gulf Coast. It was great. I had a great time. I was introduced to Corona Ritas, which are margaritas with upside down bottle of Coronas in them. And I would say actually one of my favorite things is being in the South with this accent, because everybody, like people, not just the South, anywhere that's not the coast. I drove across America, and Kansas, I had the most fun. Every time I stopped in Kansas, which you have to stop a lot because it's far too big and there's nothing to do other than drive. Everyone I met was just like, can you say tomato? And I'd be like, tomato. They're like, can you say, you know, like it was ridiculous. Someone asked me if I was from Bridgerton. Another person asked me if I narrated the Nature Channel. Someone asked me, seriously asked me, have you met the Queen? And I said, seriously, yes, twice.
That's hilarious. We get a lot of that with Southern accents. So when we go up north, people ask us to say things. Oh, those aren't.
Or they'll repeat what you say after you say it, and you're like, "Oh, did I say that country or something?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in Boston for the first time recently, and the driver unironically said, "Park the car."
And you,
He was just complaining about like construction. He's like, yeah, there's no way to park the car. And I was like, you said it.
you said it right off the bat.
Thank you, Chris, for doing this with us. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, this has been great, man. I appreciate you coming out and
It's been delightful.
this still the freestyling. I know you simplified. It's still mind-boggling how,
Yeah, it's really
on a
cool.
consistent basis.
We think you're cool and awesome, very talented, and we're jealous that we don't have as much talent as you. So,
Oh, well, that's okay.
Good day, sir.
I have a question before we leave.
yes, of course.
Do you want me to do a freestyle about
I
the
do want
suggestions
you-
that you gave to Raelyn? So we had stoplight, golf cart, and river. And do you remember what the fourth one was?
Gas.
Gas. Okay.
Like gasoline,
Okay.
not.
Gasoline. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Not petroleum gas. Okay. Well, this is a freestyle about stoplights, golf carts, rivers, and gas. See, are you impressed that I remembered them all?
Yeah.
Already. You can,
Yeah, okay.
you're
And
done
then
as
I'm going to
far as
rhyme as much as I would wish to mess this up, but it's going to be good. Cool. We turn it up, make it hot, right? Take off, not a stoplight. Red, see the sign, I be like, no, my type. I'm rolling through on the back of a Harley or maybe a Tesla. Me and my army, I give it full throttle when I see the light green taken away. See the crowd scream, ever so upset they start to quiver. I do a right turn, oh shit, crash to the river. A situation never so iffy, a sticky, sinking in the Mississippi. So many S-I's, P's, too many letters in the river going down. Yeah, you know I flow better than a river. Ha, understand ya. Left, right, curving, that's meander. Ooh, yeah, you best know I got the sediment. That's alluvial flow. That's the one for my geologist studying the rocks. Oh, get the gas so I never stop in the shop. I'll be getting it there at the pump. If you're buying it in New York, yeah, you're a chump. You need to get it up in Pennsylvania. $2 off a gallon, that's a nice saver. Or maybe you could wake up early, fill it up easily. No diesel, New Jersey, fill in the tank. Yeah, I got a bevy of the gasoline inside the truck. It's a Chevy and I crank it up ever so much that it won't start. Electric like a golf cart. I'm riding, do it with these golf carts on the streets when I'm out in Belize. That's my goal. Traveling by the seashore. Take me from 1 to 18 holes. My golf cart, ride along with a baddie. Now it's not a babe, nah, it's my caddy. Taking on my golf clubs or my little wedges. Me and my best friends a bunch of ledges. But right back there to the stop. Gotta get my golf car, pull it up, I come a crop, I park it there. Look on my face, I park it in the electrical vehicle charging space. Boom. Look at that.
That's amazing. Good job.
All right,
It is, isn't
Now
it?
you go. And a one, and a two.
No.
That was great, man.
Oh, thank you. What a treat to be able to do it.
Yeah, if you're ever in Nashville, you got to look us up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's a place I want to be. I did shows with a band who were from there, a band called Sawyer, and I was like, so what's it like? They were just like, it is absolutely fantastic. And I know it's famous for having a lot of kind of bachelorette parties and things, and I'm from the UK, where that's literally our bread and butter. Every comedy show is full of bachelorette parties, which suck because bachelor parties, if they're being dicks, you're just like, hey, you're an idiot. Hey, you're fat. And everyone's like, ha ha ha, he's a fat idiot. Whereas if bachelorette parties are shouting and you're like, shut up, you slag. Everyone's like, how dare you call Karen a slag? And then
Yeah, you don't want to call a bachelorette party fat.
Exactly. So no, let's, I will endeavor to come down to Nashville and we'll have to collab for a little freestyle rap with a band. That would be pretty sick.
Yeah, I'm
There
gonna
you go.
practice. I'm gonna practice, and we'll do a.
And I'm going to not practice, and I'll do my thing.
Yeah, I'll do.
Yeah.
We'll do like a freestyle battle, and you'll just automatically win. But it'll be funny. It'll be funny.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting.
All right, man.
Same.
Nice to meet you, brother.
Bye.
Likewise. Ta-ra for now.
Chris Turner is my favorite comedian.
Enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole. Enjoy your cigarette.
I knew it was coming, too. I knew it.